So what's going on guys, Kate here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 best new overpowered builds in a new world. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes, weapon masteries and even weapon and gear perks you want to have. Then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much damage as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons, so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies and much more. So, if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first build, which is the one and only greatsword and hatchet. And these are the attributes you want to have. So no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your dexterity and strength both to 100, and then get 50 points in constitution. And then continue putting everything else in dexterity and strength. And then around level 60 and 625 item score gear, you should have around 150 strength, 150 dexterity and 150 constitution. And lastly, for your gear, you want to go with the heavy category, and this of course means using every single heavy equipment. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the greatsword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, you want to select this one perk, and then unlock the first ability called the relentless rush, and then get these two next perks. Then from here, let's move over to the other side and unlock both these two abilities, called the calamity counter and roaring rupture. And then lastly get these 5 perks, and that's it. Now from this point and onwards, you're free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the hatchet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the berserk ability with these 2 perks. Then afterwards let's move over to the other side and unlock the second ability called the rendering throw, and then get these 2 perks. And then lastly unlock the last third ability called the infected throw, and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now again from this point you're free to choose in whichever order you want to spend your points. Okay, so now let's move over to the gameplay, where I will show you the best way to play this build. And for the first weapon we have the greatsword, and your first Q ability is called the relentless rush, which will dash through your enemies while spinning and applying at 20% slow for the next 4 seconds. Then for the second ability we have the roaring rupture, which when you use it, it will stab the ground and create a shockwave that will do a bunch of AoE damage, and you will get a fortify effect for the next 5 seconds. And in PvE, if you want to be a tank, then after using the skill, you will aggro all the mobs on you. And then lastly we have the third skill called the calamity counter, which will give you a block for 2 seconds. And depending on how many times the enemy continues to attack you, the more counter damage you will be able to do after the 2-second block expires. And then for the second weapon we have the hatchet, and your first Q ability is called the berserk, which after activating, you will enter the berserk mode, which will give you speed, self-healing and attack damage increase. So this skill is amazing just to use in open world to catch players or run away from them, and it's amazing as well just to activate and then spam the basic attacks for super high damage. Then for the second ability we have the rendering throw, which will throw a hatchet that does damage and reduces the enemy's damage absorption for 10%. And then lastly we have the infected throw, which will make your character leap in the air and throw another hatchet that will deal damage and inflict the enemy with disease, which will make your target weaker for 10% for the next 10 seconds. Okay, so then let's move over to the rotation, and no matter if you're farming mobs in PvE or doing PvP, the same principle and rules apply. So at the beginning of the fight we want to start with the greatsword, and first we'll use the relentless rush, then dodge once, then use one heavy attack, then activate the roaring rupture, then now again dodge once, and then now we want to use about 3 more heavy attacks. And then lastly we use the calamity counter before the defiant stance ends from the roaring rupture, and that's it. The idea behind greatsword is for every 3 attacks we want to dodge once, and then we want to activate these skills in this exact order, because this will activate the step and strike perk, which will give us empower and stamina. And then when all of the effects have run out on the greatsword, then now we want to switch to the hatchet and activate the berserk mode. Then use 3 light attacks, then use the infected throw, then use 3 more light attacks, then use the rendering throw, and then we finish it off with the 3 more light attacks. And now from this point we repeat the same rotation all over again. And specifically for PvP, the skill rotation might be different depending on what the enemy does, but similar principles apply. So at the start you want to attack with the greatsword heavy attacks, relentless rush and roaring rupture, then switch to the berserk to activate the berserk mode, and then keep spamming normal light attacks with the rest of your skills. And then lastly, if you ever get in trouble or need more defensives, then switch back to the greatsword and use the calamity counter, and that's it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This greatsword and hatchet weapon combination right now is one of the best builds in New World. This build will give you high tankiness while at the same time give you a massive amount of damage. So then last but not the least, for the greatsword and hatchet, you want to use the opal gem. And then for all of your gear, use 3 malachites and 2 onyx gems. And then lastly, on your character, you want to equip the heart rune of the detonate. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find the link in this video's description or just scroll through my channel. And in that video I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your gear and weapons and much more. So in a quick summary, if you're looking to do high damage or you just want to use one of the best greatsword builds, then for sure try this one out and have fun. So then moving over to the second build, which is a very strong PvP setup in this current meta, and for the weapons we want to use the blunderbuss and fire staff, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0, you want to get your intelligence to 200, and then start building your constitution, and around level 60 you should have 350 intelligence and 100 constitution. And lastly, for your gear, you want to go with the light category, which means using one medium chest piece and then the rest light equipment. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the blunderbuss, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock the first ability called the Azot Shrapnel Blast, and then get these 3 perks. Then now we take a closer look at the other side and unlock the second ability called the Splitting Grenade, and then get these 2 perks. And then lastly, unlock the last final ability called the Blast Shot, and then get these 2 perks. And now from this moment and onwards, you can spend your points in whatever order you want. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the fire staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, you want to unlock the first ability called the Pillar of Fire, and then get this 1 perk. Then now let's go to the second ability called the Fireball, and then get these 2 perks. And now let's move over to the right side and unlock this 1 perk, and then the last final ability called the Incinerate, and then get these 5 perks, and that's it. Now again, you can use your points in whatever way you like. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I will show you the best way to play this build. And for the first weapon we have the blunderbuss, and the first Q spell is called the Azot Shrapnel, which will fire a single grenade that will stick to the enemy and explode in 3-meter range and do massive amounts of damage. Then for the second skill we have the Splitting Grenade, which will shoot a grenade that can bounce up to 4 times, each time inflicting burn damage and then exploding in 3-meter range. And then lastly we have the Blast Shot, that will shoot a blast that will knock the enemies in front of you and give you and your allies 25% movement speed. And then for the second weapon we have the Fire Staff, and your Q spell is called the Pillar of Fire, which will shoot this burst of flames in 2-meter radius, but it will lock you in a casting animation for 2 seconds. Then the next ability is called the Fireball, which will shoot this fireball that will deal damage and burn the enemies in 3-meter range. And then lastly we have the Incinerate, that will create a fiery explosion around you, which will deal damage to the enemies and push them back. Okay, so now let's move over to the rotation, and no matter if you're farming mobs in PvE or doing PvP, the same principle and rules apply. So first of all, you want to start the fight with the blunderbuss Blast Shot, then use the Splitting Grenade, and for this ability to detonate faster, remember to double tap the skill button. Then from now, keep on using auto attacks, and to finish off weak enemies or mobs, use the Azot Shrapnel Blast. Or then, if you are fighting against a boss, a strong player or bunch of mob groups, then now we switch to the Fire Staff and use the Fireball, then Pillar of Fire, then Incinerate, and then we finish off the enemy with auto attacks. And then lastly, don't forget to use the Blast Shot as soon as it comes off cooldown, because it applies the rend to the enemies. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This blunderbuss and fire staff weapon combination is the current highest DPS build in your world, and this build will not only give you very high damage, but as well you will be able to fight off bruiser enemies because of your blunderbuss abilities. So then last but not the least, for both weapons you want to use the sapphire gem, and then for all of your gear use 3 malachite and 2 onyx gems, and then on your character you want to equip the heart rune of detonate. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can just find the link in this video's description or just scroll through my channel. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for the most fun and the best PvP build in your world, then this is the one for you, so enjoy! So then moving over to the last build, which is the mage class, and for the weapons we want to use the void gauntlet and ice gauntlet. And these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0, you want to get your intelligence to 150 and then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 300 intelligence and 150 constitution. And lastly, for your gear, you want to go with the medium category. And the best gear setup is to have heavy helmet, heavy chest armor, medium gloves, light pants and medium boots. And this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavy weight category. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the void gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock both these two perks and then get the first ability called the Oblivion, and then get these two perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Petrifying Scream, and then get these two perks as well. And now let's move over to the other side and unlock the last third ability called the Orb of Decay, and then get these three perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can unlock all the other perks in whatever way you like. Okay, so now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock the first ability called the Ice Spikes, and then get these three perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Ice Storm, and then get these three perks. Then from here, let's move over to the other side and unlock this one perk, and then the last third ability called the Ice Shower, and then get this one last perk, and that's it. Now again, from this moment, you can spend your points in whatever order you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first of all, for the Void Gauntlet, we have the first Q ability called the Oblivion, which creates a circle around you, and you and your teammates inside the circle will be getting 20% damage increase. But on the other hand, your enemy standing in the circle will be taking void damage every second. Then for the second ability, we have the Petrifying Scream, which when using will unleash a void scream, and this will stagger and root enemies in front of you. And then lastly, we have the third ability called the Orb of Decay, and you can fire this orb which can go to your enemies, and each enemy that it hits, it will deal decent damage and reduce their damage absorption, and then later that orb will come back and heal you for a few seconds. And lastly, if you hold the right mouse button, you can regain more mana, but in exchange your health will go down. I definitely would not recommend to use this mechanic for this specific build. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and your Q spell is called the Ice Storm, which all enemies standing in it will get damaged and slowed, and the more enemies you hit, the higher damage you will get. Then the R ability is called the Ice Shower, which when using will create an ice wall, and if a player goes through it, it will stun him. And this ability is very useful in chapping your targets. And then lastly, the third ability is called the Ice Spikes, which when you use it, it creates a trail of spikes in a straight line, which deals damage in the small AoE range. This ability is very useful and high damage if you use it correctly. And the way it works is that when you use the ability, but if you're too close to the enemy, then the ice spikes won't explode with the highest damage possible. So what you want to do is when using this ability, and you see that the player is 1 second away from getting hit, then press your right mouse button and this will detonate the spikes, which will deal very high damage. So then as far as your ability combinations go, this build has basically two one-shot combos. One combo is for the Ice Gauntlet, where you place the Ice Shower on the enemy player, and then put the Ice Storm and then hit the target with the Ice Spikes. And then the second combo is for the Ice Gauntlet, where you stun the enemy with the Petrifying Scream and then place the Oblivion ability plus auto attack the target, while doing medium jumps to activate the Opal Gem on your weapon, and that's about it. Most of the time you want to save your medium jumps to escape enemy abilities, and lastly, whenever you get low health, use your Orb of Decay and heal yourself for a few seconds, and that's about it. So then for my last and final conclusions for this build. This Void Gauntlet and Ice Gauntlet weapon combination is very high damage, and you basically have two different one-shot possibilities every 10 to 15 seconds, so you can easily destroy your enemies in a 1v1 or even in a 1v2. So then for our gem choice for the Void Gauntlet, you want to use the Opal Gem. Then for your Ice Gauntlet, get the Malachite Gem. And then for all of your gear, rings, amulets and everything else, use the Enix Gems. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find the link in this video's description or just scroll through my channel. And in that guide I will explain how perks work and which ones are the best for the highest damage possible and much more. So in a quick summary, if you are looking for the best and my most favorite mage DPS build, then this is the one for you, so enjoy! And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other very high DPS builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe, and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day, and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.